I've played nothing but Venture so far in Season 10, and I can safely say, yep, they're the chomper. I'm so addicted to Venture's playstyle, it's actually insane. I'm going to talk a little bit about Venture's gameplay style today, also some general tips and fun tech you can try out to improve your Venture gameplay, so stay tuned and hopefully you'll learn something new. Timestamps are in the description so you can view at your own pace. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. Okay, here's a bit of context about the type of player I am, and if you're in a similar position, you'll find this video informative. My highest rank ever has been top 500 in both tank and support, and what was my highest rank on DPS? I can't aim in games one bit, which is why my DPS rank is so caca-poo-poo. It's so embarrassing being asked who my most played heroes are. It's Junkrat, Roadhog and Moira, the most brain rot smooth brain heroes in the entire game. When the Venture trailers came out, I actually came my pants a little bit when I saw the Chomper reincarnated. Well, I have a ludicrous amount of hours dedicated to Garden Warfare. I figured that would get me sectioned if anyone found out. So you can imagine my excitement when a melee playstyle I'm disgustingly experienced with made its way to the pigsty hellscape that's currently monopolising my time. Well, my time's either spent playing this or rewatching My Hero Academia for the 5th time in preparation for the Dogwater Season 7. You tell me which is the worst way to spend my time. Are you new to Venture? I'll keep this bit brief and simple for now, just in case you're new. Skip ahead if you already know their abilities. Venture is probably about a medium difficulty hero in my opinion, with fairly straightforward abilities, so don't worry too much about your mechanical skill. Venture's primary fire is a short to medium range projectile that explodes on impact or after a very short duration. Think Junkrat mixed with Sigma's primary fire. Venture's melee has unique properties. The initial impact damage is reduced compared to other heroes, but the melee lasts for about a second, dealing damage with each tick. This results in more damage overall compared to other heroes. Venture's passive gives them temporary shields when using abilities, much like Doomfist's passive, perfect for their dive playstyle. Venture's shift ability is Burrow. Garden Warfare fans rejoice, this ability lets you burrow into the ground becoming invulnerable, and you can launch back up by re-inputting the ability or left click. You can charge this up to go higher and deal more damage. Venture's right click is Drill Dash. It will launch you in any direction you are facing, damaging dragging opponents along the way. This ability can be cast in Burrow for a smaller horizontal effect, and the cooldown is basically halved. Venture's ultimate has 4 shots and will cause shockwaves across the ground. Use it like you would a Rhino, it just doesn't stun. Okay, now that the basic bits are out of the way, let's cover some of Venture's dirty little combos and gameplay loop. So, Venture is an off DPS, meaning that most of their damage comes from their abilities, not their primary fire. When playing Venture on attack, your primary focus is to disrupt, dive, and snowball. Your passive shielding and invulnerable burrow makes it incredibly easy for you to engage fights and claim space. Just you being underground under the enemy gives them a disadvantage, as they need to not be in your blast zone when you emerge. Use this with your tank to take high ground or push through chokes. You can use your drill dash to escape or snowball if your team gets a pick. With pushes like these, I highly recommend burrowing, and as soon as you enter the animation, hold right click so you'll dash as soon as possible, then going under an enemy and wait until the last moment before the timer on your burrow runs out, then charge up as much as possible and your drill dash will be ready off cooldown for you to dive further or disengage safely. This will be your bread and butter combo for a lot of your fights. It's up to your judgment if you should use it aggressive or defensive after your burrow. It's worth noting your burrow reloads your ammo, so spam into the enemy as much as you can, then use your burrow to reload. This way you can disrupt and be ready for dealing damage again as soon as you emerge. Playing Venture on defense is slightly different. Your goal is to deny space, spam around corners, and keep on making the enemy second guess themselves. If you see someone push up, use that bread and butter combo from before to get to the backline and stagger their team. You will most likely want to use your drill dash for escape on defense, but don't be afraid to snowball if your team is with you. Kill trading on Venture is actually not too bad, since you can get to the point very fast in creative ways, as you'll find out later. It's worth noting that on both attack and defense with Venture you will want to play around corners a lot. In my experience, using your burrow to bait the enemy around corners and time your launch can separate players from their team and set up a nice 1v1 that also gives you a safe escape option out of line of fire if you need it. Your burrow is great for mind games too. Using it to bait abilities and force the enemy to deal with you is great. Hell, some players will even have nightmares about you of some of your plays. If you follow some of these tips and tricks, you'll be sure to be in their nightmares tonight. Now it's time to cover some tricks and techs to improve your Venture gameplay and give you the competitive advantage. I'm including these tips in their own section, since these come down to the mechanics of Venture, not the general gameplay decisions. Okay, so let's cover some rollout tips. If you want to get to the point as fast as possible, you're going to want to employ your bread and butter combo from before. Burrow, then instantly hold right click so it triggers as soon as possible, get as far as you can with that dash, let the burrow emerge on its own, and finally use your right click for that extra distance. Angle it upwards slightly so you can have extra momentum going forward off the ground. It's even better if you can use your burrow emerge or drill dash to get to high ground or over obstacles. It's worth mentioning that Venture's burrow dash can be curved unlike the normal drill dash, so don't be afraid of using this to take tight corner rollouts. Another very useful thing you can do to improve your rollouts too is to look for edges you can use to burrow dash on that can extend your initial burrow dash duration and distance. For instance, any map with a dropship spawn point, you can do this easy. You need to follow the steps mentioned earlier, but this time you'll need to time it so at near the end of your burrow dash you will dash off the edge. This will then extend your dash and extend your horizontal speed. It's important to do this near the end of your dash, otherwise the time difference isn't worth it. This is also useful anywhere you can time this tech in your fights. For instance, you can use it to quickly engage on backlines if you timed properly, getting in and out quickly. Okay, now for some mechanical tips. It's important to remember that your drill dash will carry your enemies in the direction of your dash. You can use this to line up your shots and other abilities. Venture's primary fire is fairly hard to direct hit with, but you can use your drill dash to set up your shots for an often guaranteed hit. If you ever want to dash on an enemy, I advise shooting one shot, dashing as close as you can to them, holding primary fire so it fires as soon as the ability ends, and then cancelling that primary fire with a melee once it fires. This is good for bursting enemies and keeping annoying characters like Tracer or Genji still for consistent damage. It's also good for pairing with your ultimate. The spread is quite small at the start of the shockwave, so use your drill to guarantee a hit very usefully. Speaking of your ultimate, treat it with care, as it's something you will want to commit to. I advise you use it far away from the enemies and objectives since it becomes wider with range, and can deny space or punish groups teamfights. It also generally keeps you safe from harm. It's worth noting that the shockwave travels through and over payloads, so catch enemies off guard whilst using its cover. Although Venture is all about using the ground to their advantage, it's quite ironic that they're quite a vertical and agile character. Use your drill dash to gain useful high ground. The passive shielding from your abilities makes it harder for enemies to challenge you if you take their high ground space. Speaking of high ground, your burrow is quite good for engaging high ground. If you use your burrow in the air, you'll instantly dive into the ground once you reach the ground, meaning you cannot be hurt like usual while it's casting. Use this to quickly safely claim space or surprise opponents with a quick inescapable burrow attack. Using this from high ground is just as good. Just be careful to keep your drill dash for escapes. This is not so much as tech, but it's useful to note that Venture's projectile size is not accurate to its model. You can actually shoot extremely close to the centre of your crosshair, as long as the centre of it is not blocked by a surface. Use this to hold tight angles and spam easier. A fun thing about your burrow ability is that the resurface knockup can be timed almost pixel perfectly whilst it's charging. You can use this to emerge exactly when you need to. You don't have to be too worried about someone dodging it if you're confident with releasing at the right time. Going back to some movement tech from earlier, your edge dashes using the burrow dashes can be quite useful for crossing vertical pitfalls. Most of the time. When you exit the edge, you travel perfectly horizontally for a short distance, so despite what the animation looks like, you will reach the other side. Your burrow dash is quite useful for getting into position quickly, so don't be afraid to cancel it earlier. I like to use the burrow dash to follow your tank to get to defensive positions quicker, and have your abilities off cooldown by the time the fights begin again. Another fun movement tech is when a random ionizing particle shoots into your CPU from the sun, sending you into the stratosphere. I hope all these tips help you play Venture a lot better. It certainly helps me improve my DPS rank. I don't think my win rate is anything to scoff at. Wait, don't look at the Mercy win rate. I'm straight, bro, I swear.